Welcome to Speechless, the customer experience podcast that leaves us without words. From the amazing customer experiences that we've seen to those cringe-worthy experiences that we all know. We will look at all of these experiences and understand how people are treated by businesses and how people remember those businesses. We won't be mentioning any brands by name to maybe praise the worthy, but to also protect the guilty. I'm Matthew Storm, and I'm speechless. Hi there. Welcome to Speechless. Again, Matthew Storm. Today, I'm very excited to welcome Adrian McDermott, who is the CTO of Zendesk. Welcome, Adrian.
Thanks, Matthew. Great to be here. Glad we could find a time to talk.
Yes. Well, we've become very familiar with Zendesk, actually, in the last few months. At USAN, we've become a partner and helping you with a lot of your Amazon Connect deployments as customers embark on new and existing voice journeys that they have. Beyond all that, what I really want to talk about today and what the podcast is really all about is actually about the real front lines of customer experience. You know, the people, hands on keyboards, headsets on ears, you know, that are talking to these customers every day. And one of the things that we talked about in preparation for this was this idea of moving from the efficiency world to enjoyment. You know, how we move from how do we just make people more efficient in their customer service jobs to really enjoying it where the customers also enjoy it. And I wanted to just get your take on that and see how that migration, what does that look like in your view?
Firstly, I just want to say I appreciate sort of the old school and correct notion that it's humans with hands on keyboards, like enjoying themselves with customer service, not just agents and
that's right,
you know, reasoning engines. But I think we're at a really interesting inflection point, right? Because we've been adding channels to customer service, adding capabilities, doing self-service. You know, we went from phone to internet, you know, to kind of like Web 2.0, all these different transitions. And as we went through those transitions, those were additions really of channel or of means of communication, like more convenience for the user, for the customer to meet them where they are. I think at the moment we're going through another shift, right? And the shift is really a change in the means of production. Like, you know, what is the core, who is doing the work of customer service and how are they doing it, right? Because more of the work has been done by, you know, the machines, as it were, by artificial intelligence. Generative AI is a wonderful tool for this. It's not a complete replacement, but it's definitely a fantastic augmentation. This gives us an opportunity, right? And the opportunity I think that we talked about was one where customer services traditionally, we've treated our contact centers, those people in the headsets, you know, around the world in contact centers or then virtually spread around working from home. We've treated them as a factory, and they were the power of that factory. They were the energy. And so they were also the constrained resource, right? I can only have so many people in my contact center. They can only answer so many inquiries. And so we measured these metrics, right? Time to first response, average handle time, tickets per day, et cetera, et cetera. These were metrics, you know, the primary metrics of contact centers were ones of human productivity or cost, right? Because that was the constraining factor. When the marginal cost of the next automated response is zero or is asymptoting to zero, tokens willing, at that point, we need different measures, right? Because we've changed the game in a good way. We always used to talk about, I'm sure you and I have made the same speeches, use the same words, what we've talked about. Hey, you know, you should think about your contact center as a revenue generator, not a cost center. And in our defense, you know, it is true, because if you look at customers that provide greater service, right, and there are myriad data points to an analyst's reports to look at this, right? But people who are known for good customer service, their you know, enterprise valuation and stock price tends to be higher. They tend to grow more. They tend to have healthier businesses and so on and so forth. But it was still a hard sell, because at the end of the day, you know, calls came in and you had to service them with humans, and that had a material cost, right? Is it $20 onshore, $3 offshore? Is it, you know, however you're measuring it, you have to measure it. That brings us to today, right? And today, where human power of the factory machine of customer service isn't the constraining factor, I think then you have to, you know, we are asking ourselves, what are the metrics that matter? I'm talking to my customers and I'm having these moments that matter. What are the metrics that matter? And we think at Zendesk, we think that it's thinking about, well, what was the transactional satisfaction? What was the transactional long-term? What's the transactional net promoter score, long-term net promoter score? What am I doing to affect this person's perception of the brand and to help them and remove friction? And what am I doing ultimately to increase the lifetime value of this customer with my company? And I think it's nice that we can now answer those questions without the underlying and enormous constraint of the cost of doing so, right? Of providing exceptional or even adequate service.
I'm so glad that you've used the word factory a few times because, in my career in customer service, early on, I was taking some classes that were offered by my employer about Lean Six Sigma and defects and using words like that to describe behaviors of humans.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, why is customer service so bad sometimes? It's because they're factories. I mean, it really was managed like how many defects of what's the standard deviation of the, it's like, like how can I get, this to happen, this, less? How can I make this faster? How can I make the defects of what people say, the defects of when they do something wrong or they process something in the wrong way? It is very, very factory-like. And then, of course, add then outsourcing, then it's just like factories and factories. Do you want your factory here? Do you want your factory in another country? Where do you want your factory? And so I like the idea of moving away from some of these talk time, handled time, hold time type metrics that have that Six Sigma type feeling of efficiency to that customer lifetime value and NPS and things that are starting to see the human side of things a little bit more. I'm glad that you brought that up. But as we go from the humans and again, the real humans on hands-on keyboards, what about the agentic world? I mean, we're looking at things where there are tasks and specific things that can be done from an agentic perspective. If I were a customer service leader and I was looking at, well, these are things that humans are doing today. Is agentic right for this? What would you just say to someone that says, I'm not sure what type of interactions and what type of experiences should be more agentic?
I often work with companies or look at, the marketing literature that's out there for businesses. And you see this focus on automation, right? It's sort of like the holy grail of a wonderful implementation. It's almost as though it's like, yeah, if we could 100% automate it, how incredible will that be? And that isn't the answer for most chief customer officers, most heads of customer service, right? The answer for them is, no, I'm committed to these core metrics of lifetime value and net promoter score and CSAT and good experiences. And I think what every business is going through now is controlling that urge to automate and seeking first to understand the quality of experience, right? I think when, in any contact center deployment, post-agentic, pre-agentic, you'd be asking this question of, what are the customer journeys? You're probably doing an 80-20 split on these 20 contact reasons are most of my volume and the long tail is much less. And thinking about how you take customers through those journeys, you figure out what they want, you establish identity, then you collect the information you need and so on and so forth. I think the opportunity now is to not have this knee-jerk reaction towards automation, but to make choices for your company, your brand, and the way that you do things, right? There are times when I want to go to a restaurant and, I kind of really like the Japanese style where there's like a vending machine outside and you put your money in or you scan your Suica card and then you press the button and you get a ticket and you hand it over and then the food comes to you, right? Sometimes you want that. And sometimes you want, the omakase menu with 14 courses and the personalized service and all that goes with it.
Right.
And it just depends on what kind of restaurant it is, what kind of experience you're looking for. In
Sure.
my mind, it's the same for agentic service, right? Where do I want to apply these tools and the enormous benefits they can bring to automation? Because my users are looking for a rapid, frictionless experience, right? And it's clear that, whether it's the ability to do generative search and remove 10 blue links and get straight into the answer, right? Which is delightful. I think most people are delighted by that. Or it's the ability to, when you're in a hurry, have it feel like true self-service, take control of the experience and drive it, even though it is, ostensibly a bot that you are talking to. And then there are other times where you're like, I'm going to go through this flow. I'm going to have to escalate because automation drives escalation. This is a pattern that we see again and again in our data. And you're like, I wish I could get to the point where I'm having a conversation with someone, and it isn't because I'm just that person who presses 0 or says, "Can I speak to your supervisor, please?" It's because I happen to know that my issue is 2 standard deviations outside the norm, and we're going to have to do something about it. And so I think the opportunity for customer service leaders is to be deliberate, is to be considered, and is to take a moment that now that you have the luxury of resources and the reduction in cost, to build the service experience for your customers that you think you want and you've always wanted to build, but were constrained by, the cost of running the human factory.
One of the questions that I often get is about the expense of the voice channel. When things can be automated and they can be more self-service and they can be through SMS and an app and a website and in different ways. What would you say to someone who has never embarked on the voice channel? Maybe I see even some Zendesk customers, especially small businesses that are maintaining customer service pretty well right now without having voice. What do you think is where's the right place to interject voice at the right time for a company?
It is, of course, use case dependent, but in general, at Zendesk, we released our first voice-based contact center, I think in 2011. And we did that to democratize access for all of these small businesses that we were serving, and tens of thousands, right? And we've provisioned tens of thousands of phone numbers for these businesses over the years, and they're still running it. We did that so that you wouldn't have to pull copper and put a switch in and fill a room with people, but you could actually have a modern experience. And in general, I think it is always going to be a preference, right? What we see at Zendesk, and we recently launched, the Zendesk contact center product for this, is that, and I've said this again, I don't want it to be a catchphrase, but it's kind of a catchphrase, right? Automation drives escalation. And so if you're going to drive more automation, you're going to have people who are needing to jump out. The preferred channel for escalation is a voice conversation with a live human. And so you need to be there with a tightly integrated system that you can use to basically capture those inquiries and carry on with them and run them through. That's one aspect of the way to think about voice in the future. And I think the technical barriers are basically being removed. The other thing about voice, though, is it's actually exceptionally convenient. If I look at my personal ChatGPT usage, most of it is actually voice-based, right? Hands-free. A lot of it is when I'm driving or sitting around or just don't want to be looking at my phone, but I'm having these conversations. And it's because it's great. It's really convenient, And I would encourage customer service leaders to sort of think about the fact that if they offer really great voice-based AI automation, right? If you deploy, Zendesk Contact Center and you deploy voice automation using AI, you can build these really nice experiences. And then what we're starting to see is the Jevons paradox effect, right? Which is, I made service much more enjoyable and easier and more convenient over the voice channel, over the phone. And suddenly more people started using it and choosing it because they had a good experience the first time they did, right? I didn't have to break out a device with a keyboard or whack with my thumbs on my personal device, right?
Sure.
I could just wander around, have a call, and get it dealt with.
That's right.
I think it's going to open up a lot of opportunities. And at Zendesk, we really thought that, voice was back in customer service, right? As we can build these fantastic automated experiences, people are going to be like, yeah, that was convenient.
So earlier when you were talking about these rapid, frictionless experiences, in this season of Zendesk Relate, what are some things that Zendesk customers should be looking out for, the new and exciting things that you see that are out there? And even you've made some really great acquisitions, you've added some new technology and partnerships. What are some things you're excited about?
We're obviously a few years into this transition towards agentic service. And it's really exciting. It's fun. We've made some new friends through acquisitions. We've built some new technology. But really, what has been impacting me and the way I think about product strategy and how that's influencing Zendesk is looking at the challenges that people are having being successful, like building the experiences they're trying to build. Like, what are the blockers? What are they trying to do? And at Relate, we'll be, finalizing work on synchronous text, asynchronous text, voice, which is, generally synchronous, and so on and so forth, right? And I think, you were talking about voice earlier. I often put voice and synchronous chat in the same bucket, which is, expensive to staff, complex to route, high, service level agreements are tougher, and you're in the moment with the customer live. And so you have to, it's just a higher bar for service, but better experience. And so we're enabling all of that. There are sort of two themes that excite me right now. And I think they're really, when you move past getting the basics working into, what's next level. So for our multi-agent platform, right? And so you have agents that talk to customers on various channels. You have agents that assist agents who are actually, customer service advocates that are actually talking to people, sort of your co-pilot style agents. We're also launching admin agents because it's really nice when you have unlimited intelligence is available to you, that you can read every interaction and look at every workflow that has run and say, I could see how this could be optimized. Or you have this macro, this canned response that you use. 9 times out of 10, agents change this wording. So why don't we just change it in the macro, right? Those little responses, and we've built hundreds, I think, into our admin co-pilot. Really powerful. And what we're trying to build is systems that are continuously self-improving and self-healing. And these are first important steps. The other thing that really is a blocker for great experiences is actually the integration with the back office. And so, we like to say that you can get to sort of a 20% automation level, maybe using one-shot responses from knowledge bases, right? And so now with, an AI can read multiple articles and all of the available information as standard operating procedure and craft a response straight back to the user with no human involvement, which is fantastic, and you can do that. But you're going to hit there's a, depending on use case, but there's a maximum there of around 20 to 30%. Then you're going to get into the next set of cases where if you have a reasoning engine that can plan and that has some sort of level of skill, it can actually have a back and forth. It could be like, hey, Matthew, which product exactly are you talking about? I see there are 6 things in that order. Which was the one you wanted to return? Like, which button are you pressing where you're getting the error message, right? Those kind of things. And so that multi-turn from a reasoning engine, that'll get you another 20% automation or, a really, if that triages the problem for the human agent and co-pilot, just a really smart auto triage kind of work that gets done that really optimizes the human agent's time for the moments that matter. I think if you want to go beyond that sort of 40, 50% that you can get with those two technologies, you have to then go into the back office environment of a customer and start running workflows and start pulling things out and dealing with things. And so we've been thinking about how to do that, right? And so we are launching this facility task agents, which is the next set of agents, right? Those are the agents that are running around in your organization, you could think of it, and doing all the work behind the scenes for a customer so that everything is teed up. Everything is ready, either for the conversation agent or the human agent that's having the conversation, right? So if you send me, an email and it has 4 PDF attachments and you're asking a bunch of questions about orders, right? Orders and parts. I want to be able to explode those, have something do what the human would be doing. Open them all up, read them, figure out what's in them, go look up those orders somewhere else, pull the information out, so on and so forth, right? If you have a really complex technical environment because you're selling a really complex piece of equipment, whether it's software or hardware, and someone comes in and asks you a question, I want to go pull diagnostics and then go through every available piece of documentation, which is a multi-step, multi-turn workflow, right? And so task agents can take these things on. And they can also run, hygiene moments in your Zendesk and do everything else. And so I'm really, conversation agents are the headlines, right? They're the attention grabbers. Woo, I had a conversation with an agent. It was amazing. But it's like any company. Behind the scenes, there's people doing all the work, right? And for me, that's the task agents, which is also represent, by the way, most of the time when you were looking at average handle time in a call, most of it wasn't spent asking Matthew questions. Most of it was spent figuring stuff out and looking it up, right? And swivel chairing between multiple systems and doing all those things. And I think if we can build a facility to help people with that, we're just compressing the time to answer, we're compressing the effort on behalf of the customer, and we're making the agents more efficient as well. So they can focus on the things they do well, like the human piece, the empathy piece, the conversation piece, and the judgment piece.
Sure.
Irreplaceable. I love these. I could go on, but those are my top 2.
Well, as we wrap up, one of the things that I like to do is ask you about the speechless experiences that you've had. What's a great speechless experience look like to Adrian McDermott?
I think lately, I'm a simple man with simple tastes, and really I'm a huge fan, and I did mention this earlier, but I'm a huge fan of sort of the Japanese concept of hospitality, or omotenashi, right? And I've been trying to figure out what the difference is, right? When you walk into a random, soba restaurant on the corner in a Japanese town in Kyushu, a smaller city, and it's just extraordinary, right? And you're like, why was that so extraordinary? And then you look, and it's the care and it's the craft. Someone is there, mixing the buckwheat in the water and rolling it out, and they have the big knife and they're chopping, and they've been doing it for years, and they take pride in that work. And I think great service comes in general, but it just manifested in that way, not from these, for me, overblown, showy moments of, exaggerated hospitality. For me, it's so much more in the little things and the little experiences, but it's really about the manifestations of care and the manifestations of craft, and just the sense of empathy, the sense that I care that you are having a good experience within the confines of the things that I do and, the economics of my business, right?
Yeah. And honestly, it's an honor for me to be able to do those things. And when I was reading about that type of service in Japan, it was without expectation for reward. Like, you and I both live in a culture where, if my waiter's really good, they'll get a better tip, or they're not getting a tip, that type of thing, or the swivel the thing around, go ahead, answer those questions, those types of things. And I think it's that, it's my honor. I mean, this is my restaurant and I want to give you this experience because, this is my family and this is my business and this is what I do.
Yeah.
More so than I'm this over exaggerated, can I get you another Diet Coke? And, that's going to get me a better tip, or, it's that expectation for reward that I think that maybe in that culture provides that sense of duty or honor, maybe with a speechless experience. I don't know, perhaps so.
I think it is. I think, we've been puzzling over, we have a quality assurance tool at Zendesk that can, listen to and rate every conversation, and actually we're making sort of a quality score for every interaction available to Zendesk customers. And we're really excited about it. And I do wonder, from a product point of view, how can we help people sort of in a digital environment, it's often hard. You have a procedure you're following, right? There is some kind of script, human or agent, and there are boundaries. But how is it? I think we've all had these experiences in almost personless sort of interaction over digital channels. But you have these moments where someone has manifested care in their job, right? Satisfaction at what you're doing, right? The owner of dieselfilters.com once wrote back to me and just told me, he's like, back in stock now. You might want to you might want to order 3 because they go out. There was just this little conversation where I hadn't ordered from them for 6 months.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a generator anymore, so I wasn't going to. But I was delighted that he sort of took the time and was like, I remember that guy was looking for that and he was having a bit of a problem, And it's
I like experiences like that.
You don't have to manifest all of the characteristics and take on the economic burden of a 5-star hotel or Michelin 3-star restaurant sometimes. But showing up as the authentic representation of your brand and feeling like I'm having this conversation with you and it actually matters to me that it goes well.
Yeah.
I think when you feel that as a customer, that is enough. And that is all we are really looking for, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. Before we go, you're going to have to give me a Japanese restaurant recommendation, please. No. But thank you again for joining, and we appreciate it. We'll see you next time on an episode of Speechless.
Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate it.
Thank you.